Here I am. Hello to the people that are coming on in here. So I usually give everybody about 5 minutes. So come on in, get comfortable. We've got a lot to unpack tonight. So this is going to be a lot of fun, right in tune with the spooky season, because we're covering all things creepy tonight. So yeah, come on in. If you're new, let us know where you're from, because we always like to have new victims here in the crypt. And don't forget to say hello. I know a lot of our absolutely adorable followers and supporters, I don't even want to say followers, but supporters, are out doing like the spooky season stuff tonight. So I'm so glad for everybody. I know we did a lot last weekend, and we're going to get into that. But we're going to give everybody about 5 minutes to get in here and get comfortable, say hello. Looks like we've already... Oh, I'm back. My fat fingers. I was trying to go to the comments. So looks like we've already got some people in here. So yeah, so let's give everybody a couple of minutes before I truly screw some things up around here in the backstage. What you guys can't see, but I can see, everything has changed. So yeah, it's super confusing. But yeah, let's give everybody a couple more minutes. Come on in, say hello if you're new. Let us know where you're from, because we always like new victims here in the crypt. We've got a really fun one tonight, to stay in line with what we've been talking about, and of course to stay in line with the spooky season. We've got to talk about all those haints and hollers and spooks and ghouls. So I've got one packed full tonight. So we may run a little bit over than the normal hour, but I'm hoping you guys don't mind. And of course, these are ones hopefully a lot of you guys have not heard of before. I dug deep on this and found some really interesting things. And you're going to see in a lot of these documented cases and stories and just oral stories that have gone down through time, a kind of reoccurring theme in quite a few of them. I was quite surprised, but I found it really interesting too. So yeah, so we'll almost give everybody about a minute more. Remember, the best way to support your streamers and programming that you like, and it's absolutely free, is to share. So I'm going to give everybody this next minute who's in here time to do that. Then we're going to go over some housekeeping, and then we will get to the comments before we get started. So yeah, got a couple of things to announce, a couple of things to bring you guys up to date on. So let me know if the music is too loud. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We've got a couple of people in here. So just to kind of go over some housekeeping, of course, I wanted to wish everybody a happy Friday the 13th. This has been a really good day for us, so I hope it has been a good one for you too. If you are not out joining the festivities of the holiday season and you are here with me, welcome, welcome. My name is Mother Della Mort, and this is my horror gallery. We were talking last time about occult places. So tonight I thought it would be fitting that we talk about occult or unseen or unknown things of the supernatural. So we did places last time. This time we're going to do things. And like I had told some of the ones that were in here a little earlier, I've dug deep on this. I'm hoping that everybody learns a little bit of something, and you'll see kind of a reoccurring theme in some of these stories. Also, I wanted to thank Spooks over at Spook Trail Haunted Maze for having us last Friday. We had tons of fun. And if you guys are close to the Birmingham Jasper area, you need to go check them out. It is a really, really good, I guess it's more family oriented, even though it could kind of go either way, but it's scary. It's scary. It leaves you very discombobulated. So it's very interesting. I don't want to give a lot away, but it's a lot of fun, and it's definitely worth the trip. And I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, he does offer discounts if you bring a canned good so that they can donate. And also Sundays are his scare-free kind of, haunt walkthroughs. So if you've got little ones that you want to take and kind of get them acclimated with kind of the haunt scene, but you don't want to traumatize them. Not quite yet. Got to wait till they're a little bit older for that. You definitely want to take them out there on Sundays. And that'll be running through the October season. Also, I wanted to let you guys know that Steve the Cat will be back, I believe, this coming up Monday. It's the 16th. So we are all super excited about that. I know you guys are as well, to have him back. And I can't wait to see what he covers, because he always covers a lot of the beloved, especially practical horror effect VHS movies and things like that. And I also wanted to wish safe trip and much fun to Hexus and Akia. They are currently out at Dark Harvest in Garden Grove, California. So they're kind of doing what we did last week, as far as, going out, having some fun, and going through a haunt and all that kind of stuff. So we really hope they have a good time. And I can't wait to hear all about it. I'm sure it's going to be lots of fun. So yeah, that. Also, don't forget, the costume contest entry ends tonight at 12 p.m. midnight Pacific Standard Time. I know we've got a lot of our supporters that are out there on the West Coast, so we don't want to cut it off at Eastern Time. We're going to wait until Pacific Time, midnight at their time, to cut it off. And then over the next 24 hours after that, you'll start seeing everybody's entries pop in there. So we've got a lot of really good ones this year. So I'm hoping the voting will be very difficult for you guys. And remember, voting is free. So definitely gather all your ghouls and ghosts and support the people that submitted their entries once we get those up. And I believe that is that. So let's go to some comments, and then we're going to get started on what we're going to talk tonight about. Monsters and ghosts and vampires. Oh my. So let's see who all's in the house. Let's see. We've got Calvin, and he says, let's see. Telling you, having a hard time with this new layout. He's saying, hello, Odd Mother. Well, hello, Calvin. I'm so glad you're here. And then we have Kisa, and she says, hi, beautiful Odd Mother. Well, hello. We are so glad you are spending your evening with us tonight. Yeah, and this is going to be a fun one. And I hope, like I said, you guys learn a little something, because I dug really deep, but we do have a lot to unpack tonight. So we're probably going to run over a little bit. And let's see. Kisa says, yay, Stephen P. Kitty Cat's coming back. I know. I am so stoked myself. We have missed him. All right, so let's go ahead and get started, because like I said, we're already 10 minutes in. We haven't even gotten started yet. Please, guys, share. That is the best way to support us and show your love, is to share out to your groups and your fellow ghouls and ghosts that you think will enjoy this. All right, so let's get started. So while Transylvania is generally dubbed the home place of all vampires, the reality is that almost every culture has legends that allude to the existence of immortal beings with an unquenched thirst for blood. And guys, let me know if this music is too loud. I think I probably need to turn it down. just a bit. There we go. All right, so the vampire, what we're going to talk about now is the vampire of Lochmaben Castle. It's worth noting that just like every other Scottish castle, Lochmaben is also steeped in gory history. You know, all those old castles are. So it is probably not at all surprising that the stories of this wicked haunting area have been spoken about for decades. Vampires, however, are an entirely different story. But nonetheless, professional ghost hunter Tom Robertson insists he came face to face with one back in 1991. Now, the professional hunter has spent his entire adult life getting up close and personal with the afterlife. But nothing he has ever encountered quite compares to what he saw in the ruins of Lochmaben Castle. After hearing tales from panic-stricken locals who described woodland creatures that had been found drained entirely of their blood, Robertson decided to investigate the site for himself. Soon after wandering into the lush green forests near the castle ruins, he did in fact meet the culprit. Just 15 feet from him was a walking, decomposing corpse with gray, almost translucent skin, black eyes, and it was dressed in a black hood. Now, according to Robertson, the creature suddenly took flight and glided itself between the trees. Move forward 8 years later, Robertson returned to Lochmaben, but this time he was more prepared to hunt the creature down. His trip was successful, he claims, and he even managed to capture the vampire on camera, which I do have a picture of. However, in a statement, he later said, I will never go back to Lochmaben, nor should you. There is a creature slinking around those woods, baying for blood. Now, to look at Lochmaben Castle more in depth and how this kind of applies to what he may or may not have seen, and I'll show you the picture and let you kind of judge for yourself. I'm a little on the fence about it, but that's not to say that it may not be true. It may not have some nugget of truth at the very base of it. So Lochmaben Castle is a ruined castle in the town of Lochmaben. It was the feudal lordships of Annandale and the United Country of Dumfries and Galloway. It was built by Edward I in the 14th century, replacing an earlier moat and bailey castle, which is kind of like when we were little and we drew pictures of castles with the tower, with the little, things at the top and the moat around it. That's considered more of a moat and bailey castle. Now, the earlier moat and bailey castle was built south, however, of the current castle in circa 1160 by the Bruce family. And yes, we are talking about William the Bruce. They were at the time lords of Annandale. But with the Bruce family came a very old curse. Now, as far as the history behind this particular area, under the Roman Empire, the early fathers claimed a privilege of intercession for condemned criminals, which almost amounted to a right to demand their pardon from the secular judge. So this is kind of getting into the curse that kind of surrounds the Bruce family and kind of where it came from. Now, in a historical document called the Chronicles of Lanarcost, written by a Grey friar by the name of Carlisle, it has a singular story turning upon the episcopal claim to procure the release of prisoners from the infliction of the death penalty, which was given at that time to the family of the Bruce. So Basically, they could pardon a criminal, kind of like our presidents can. But, of course, in those days, most certainly you didn't spend a lot of time in the prisons and dungeons. You were quickly taken care of and most likely put to death. So they could basically pardon you from that. Now, the bishop, this kind of the story as to how the curse came about. There was a bishop, and now the bishop had reached Annan, the capital of that dale at the time, where he sought refreshments from the lord of the place, which at that time would be the Bruce family. This being, of course, Robert de Bruce, lord of Annandale at that time, and he was the son of the original guarantee. But in those cases, whenever a son kind of took the place of his father, they would, get everything that their father could do. So he would be the secondary grantee. Now, the bishop was warmly welcomed and seated at an ornate table to the north side of the Bruce's hall. He was partaking of food along with two fellow clerics, which were his companions, when he heard the servants discussing the fate of a robber who was about to undergo his sentence of death. Now, shortly after, the Bruce himself entered with a hearty greeting to his guests. Now, the bishop's heart, however, was filled with the thought of the poor wretch without, whose doom was so near. He at once appealed to the Bruce, who, as baron with the jurisdiction of pit and gallows, basically he asked for him to pardon the thief as he held the thief's fate in the hollow of his hand. I demand, he said, the humane and warm-hearted Irishman, as a pilgrim that since the judgment of blood has never yet violated the place of my presence, if the man has committed any crime, you will grant me his life. So he was basically asking for pardon for that particular criminal or what have you. Now the bishop's noble host nodded, says the Grey Friar chronicler, not in courtesy, but it was actually in deceit, and acting according to the prudence of this world, which is folly with God, he secretly gave orders to hang the thief. Now, meanwhile, the bishop, in happy ignorance, rejoiced that he had saved a human life, finished his repast, and prepared to go on his way. Before starting, he bestowed his solemn blessing on the Bruce house and table and household. As he was departing, imagine his surprise to behold, hanging on the gallows near the roadside, was the body of that very robber. The life for which he had interceded, as he supposed successfully, was after all not his. The Bruce, with his nod, had betrayed the bishop. Upon seeing this, and realizing he had been deceived, he promptly revoked his blessing, and turned it into a curse. First on the Bruce, and then to the Bruce's offspring, and then secondly to the town itself. However, our story started with the Lochleven Castle that we were currently talking about. This is where our particular story is going to go now. It starts with the arrival of a mysterious stranger from York, because the connection with the vampire that Robertson says that he's seen may in fact have some ties to not only the Bruce family, but to the castle itself. So the way it kind of came about is the arrival of a mysterious stranger from York, which was all this was chronicled by a man by the name of William of Newburgh. Now, this is pretty much kind of quoting what he said, but the man from York who wandered in and was given lodging by the de Bruce family at this particular castle, which would be it would be Lochleven. Now, the rumor goes that at the time that this man was apparently on the run for some crimes or atrocities he had committed, but as to what these are, it's not documented. He's said to have married a wife, but soon became convinced that she was cheating on him, leading to him seeking to catch her in the act. Now, William of Newburgh would write of this man in his woes, and I quote, "A certain man of evil conduct flying, through fear of his enemies or the law, out of the province of York, to the lord of the before-named castle," which is Lochleven, "took up his abode here, and having cast upon a service befitting his humor, labored hard to increase rather than correct his own evil propensity." So he really, whatever he must have done, he didn't repent for it. He just carried on with his normal behavior. He did wind up taking a wife, and to his own ruin indeed, as it afterwards appeared, for hearing certain rumors respecting her, he was vexed with the spirit of jealousy. Anxious to ascertain the truth of these reports, he pretended to be going on a journey from which he would not return for some days. But coming back in the evening, he was basically privately introduced, he basically snuck into his bedroom, or was helped by a maidservant who was in the secret and lay hidden on a beam overhanging. So basically he hid on a beam overhanging the bedroom. Now, this was of his wife's chamber, and that he might prove with his own eyes if anything were done to dishonor basically the marriage bed. Hereupon, beholding his wife in the act of fornication with a young man of the neighborhood, and in his indignation, forgetful of his purpose, he fell and was dashed heavily to the ground near where they were lying. So he basically fell off the beam. The fall, however, did not kill the man, and as the other man fled, the wife helped her wounded husband. Now, shortly after this, he fell down with a mysterious illness and died in his sleep some nights later. We're talking about the husband. After this, many other people in the area too began to fall ill, until it was spreading like a plague through the castle and surrounding towns. In addition to this, it was reported that the man who had been staying at the castle was now lurking around the shadows at night, pale and gaunt, despite the fact that he had died and had been buried in the cemetery. In addition to seemingly rising from the grave, he was often seen in the presence of a pack of vicious barking dogs, who followed him around everywhere. And it was also said that he would attack people, and that wherever he went, the mysterious plague followed. The belief at the time was that he rose from his grave at night, animated by some sinister energy, only to return to it after his night of malevolence had come to an end and the sun rose, bringing the pestilence to whatever he had been. Other rumors were that the man was feeding off the blood of those he attacked, and that these people would soon succumb to the disease as well. The people of the region became terrified of this reverend. Now, William of Newburgh would say of this, and I quote, "A Christian burial indeed he received, though unworthy of it, but it did not much benefit him, for issuing by the handiwork of Satan from his grave at night time, and persuaded by a pack of dogs with horrible barkings, he wandered through the courts and around the houses, while all men made fast their doors, and did not dare to go abroad on any errand whatever from the beginning of the night until sunrise." So he would only go as far as he could to make it back before sunrise, for fear of meeting and being beaten black and blue by this vagrant monster. So even men weren't traveling at that time. But those precautions were of no avail, for the atmosphere, poisoned by the vulgarities of this foul carcass, filled every house with disease and death, And it's basically just plague, breath, and putrid breath. Already did the town, which but a short time ago was populous, appeared almost deserted, while those of its inhabitants who had escaped destruction migrated to other parts of the country, lest they too should die. 2 men who lost their father to the plague, brought by this undead creature, decided that it was time to fight back and destroy the evil, and they went about hunting down the location of the grave under the protection of sunlight, armed with shovels to dig and torches to kill with righteous fire. They apparently found the corpse soon enough, and when they did, they were shocked to see that the man looked to be engorged with blood. And for the people that really like dig kind of the dark history and cryptids, we're not talking about sparkly vampires like Twilight, or even like Bram Stoker's, kind of romantic vampires. If you look at a lot of the vampiric history that surrounds the vampire or vampire, they're not, you don't want to look upon them. They're basically kind of a pustulous, blood engorged, bloated corpse is what they are. And being that this was notated and chronicled during this time, it's got that same rhythm of how the vampire was actually viewed in history. So he was engorged with blood. This frightened them, but they were driven by the desire to avenge their dead father, and so commenced their assault. Now the writings of William of Newburgh described what followed. Thereupon, snatching up a spade, but of indifferent sharpness of edge, and hastening to the cemetery, they began to dig. And whilst they were thinking they would have to dig to a great depth, they suddenly, before much of the earth had been removed, laid bare the corpse, swollen to an enormous size, with its countenance beyond measure, and suffused with blood, while the napkin on which it had been wrapped appeared nearly torn to pieces. So basically the death shroud. The young man, however, spurred by wrath, feared not, and inflicted a wound upon the senseless carcass, out of which continually flowed such a stream of blood that it might have been taken for a leech filled with the blood of many a person. Then, dragging it beyond the village, they speedily constructed a funeral pyre, and upon one of them saying that the pestilent body would not burn unless its heart were torn out, the other laid open its side by repeatedly blows of the blunt spade, and thrust in his hand, dragging out the accused heart. This being torn to piecemeal, and the body now consigned to the flames, it was announced to the guests what was going on, who, running thither and there, enabled themselves to testify henceforth to the circumstance. When that infernal hellhound had thus been destroyed, the pestilence which was rife among the people ceased, as if the air, which had been corrupted by the contagion, motions of the dreadful corpse, were already purified by the fire which had consumed it. Now, although the creature described is never specifically referred to as a vampire, it is obvious that such a tale, and it leaves one to wonder if there was any truth of the story at all. Is there any historical reality to this tale, or it is merely a legend, along the supposed curse on the castle? And you're going to ask too, and we're going to get to that, how does the Bruce family living in one location connect to Loch Laban Castle and this particular vampire story, as well as the sightings of professional paranormal investigator Mr. Robertson and what he claims to see? And we're going to go over that now. So whether Annan Castle was cursed and menaced by a vampire or not, the castle was mysteriously abandoned for reasons still debated and not completely understood. Some think it was the rising of the river that caused the pestilence, while others believe that the de Bruce family simply moved to a new castle they had built at Loch Laban, which was only a short distance north. So basically, if this curse was placed on the family, they moved from one castle to another, and that last castle being Loch Laban, it does have a connection with what Mr. Robertson has seen. Now, I'm going to show you a picture of what he took a picture of. Personally, it looks like somebody in a rain slicker. But you know what? I'm going to let you make your decision. So this is kind of a blown up, kind of zoomed in of what he supposedly took a picture of. He did describe it as being a swollen corpse, almost translucent skin. But now he also said that the first time he met him, it was wearing black. To me, this kind of looks like a rain slicker, to be very honest with you, or a poncho. But who knows? Who knows? If anything, even if this is just all hubbub, there is usually a kernel of truth that go along with these oral traditions that are at some point chronicled. So it's a fun story. It's a fun story. It's an interesting story. If you ever get a chance to go to Loch Laban, then you can check it out yourself. All right, so now we're going to go to the Inverness Edinburgh vampire. Now, the 1950 murder of the medical student Andrew Murr remains unsolved to this day, but the circumstances surrounding his death have led many to question whether it was a human that took his life or something else entirely. Now, around the time of his untimely death, Andrew was said to have been investigating the paranormal activity within the William Wren House Hotel. During this time, several staff and visitors had reportedly seen an evil apparition during their time in the building that watched their every move. Unsurprisingly, most of the men left the hotel, never to return. But acting on a dare from his friends, Andrew asked the owners if it would be possible for him to hold a midnight seance in the room with the most activity. And this was 1915. We were still in kind of the Victorian, Edwardian kind of death culture where, you know, they were doing the seances and the mysticism and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So now they did agree to his bizarre request and left him with a bell, which he was told to ring if he needed anything. Sure enough, a few hours into the seance, the bell began to chime loudly, followed by one blood-curdling scream. When the owners entered the room, they found Andrew's lifeless body with 2 bleeding puncture wounds to his neck. Many believe the murder was the work of an apparition, who they claim was the late William Brain, who was the previous owner of the house. It was said that after his passing, Brain was buried 40 foot down in a secured coffin as per his strict instruction. But no one ever knew why he had made these strange requests. Now, a little bit of history about Brain. Brain lived alone in a large house of 10 rooms, which would have been the William Brain Hotel, and was never seen to go out during the day. No one seemed to visit him apart from a cleaner who called from time to time. He was a mysterious man, and an enigma deepened basically on his death. You know, there was a lot of whispering and rumors and things like that when he died. He was a mystery man. Now, all the neighbors saw once he had passed away was a coffin being removed from the house by the undertakers they did not recognize, then taken to a destination that was not revealed. Equally as puzzling were the actions of William's cleaner. She had keys to the house and was seen to lock all the windows and bolt all the doors, both the front and the back. For no one could get in and no one could have gotten out easily either. The cleaner then vanished, never reappeared, and the house, grand as it was, began to deteriorate gradually over the next few years. With obvious signs of neglect, as paint withered from the door, basically it just sat there and rotted. But was the house empty? Neighbors on either side began to wonder as noises were heard through the wall. Was it significant that these were normally heard during the hours of darkness, especially after midnight? And voices they heard too, both men and women. They could be heard even though people were certain that no one went into or came out of the Bren house. No lights could be seen, and during the day, the whole house seemed quite dead. However, no one bothered to investigate the house, and the house was left in peace. At some point, however, and after many years, the house was sold. But a lot of time had passed since Brian had died, and World War I was underway. The house was done up as a boarding house, and rooms were let out to unsuspecting visitors. The house soon revealed that whatever had been lurking there had not gone away. Had the sale been a ploy to attract innocent victims? Was someone or something hiding in one of the attic rooms? One of the staff reported hearing voices coming from one of these chambers. When she went to look, however, there was no one there. A cleaner had the same experience, but also felt an invisible presence standing next to her, so intense and evil that she believed it was trying to take control of her mind. She felt, she said, almost hypnotized. Now, vampires, it should be noted, have the power of invisibility and try to take over a person before attacking them. And of course, that's debatable, depending on, what type of vampire you're talking about. In the light of these events, it was decided that it would not be advisable to let the rooms. So basically, the boarding house shut down and the home was kept empty. However, it is sometimes hard for a hotel owner to turn business away. A young couple desperate for accommodations were in fact given a room, as it was the only one that was occupiable. When they went up to the room, they did hear voices. They guessed a mistake had been made and called for help. Now, Mary Brewster was the staff member who came in response. Knowing the room must be empty, she walked straight in and saw something that utterly shocked her. When the owner rushed up on hearing her shrieks, he found her clutching the end of the bed and gazing up at an attic window as if something had just disappeared through it. Mary was in a very badly shaken state and refused to discuss what she had seen. She left and never came back. Now, at this point, this is when Andrew Murr arrived. And basically, he was found dead later in the evening by the staff. So, interesting one, not one that you hear a lot about. I did try to look up this particular Andrew Murr. And apparently Murr is like a really popular name in this part of Edinburgh. So, I don't know. It's possible. It's possible. All right. Let's see. What time is it? It is 11:40. Let's do one more, and then we're going to go to a short break, and then we'll get to the comments. Now, long before the modern day Hollywood had its werewolf vampire hybrids, there was, however, the chronicle or documentation of the Hunter Priest. Now, the Hunter Priest basically loosely translates to dog priest. Now, this particular tale is known as the Evil Monk of Melrose Abbey, of Melrose, Roxenburgshire. Now, founded in 1136, Melrose Abbey was one of several Cistercian monasteries to be built along the Scottish borders. But as well as being the final resting place of many famous kings and nobles, these religious grounds are famous for a far more sinister reason. In the 12th century, Melrose Abbey was home to a priest who was never popular among his religious brethren, to say the least. He was known for constantly breaking the rules, and the other monks had even gone so far as to nickname him the Hunter Priest, due to the fact that he would always go hunting with dogs rather than dedicate his time to God like them. And when he died in the spring of 1196, he was laid to rest in the adjoining cemetery, but he was far from being at peace. Each night following his demise, the Hunter Priest would rise from his tomb to wander the grounds. He would often awaken the other priests with his constant wailing, but even more terrifying, he was also known to drink the blood of the nuns. Realizing that their prayers and pleas for help were never going to be answered, a group of priests gathered around the creature's grave one night. This time, when the former priest climbed from his grave, the living monks were ready and waiting with a huge axe, which they used to behead the undead beast. The following morning, when they returned to the tomb, blood was flowing from the Hunter Priest's wounds. The body was then removed, cremated, and his ashes were scattered to the winds. And even today, there are those of the town that vow they can still hear a muted scream through the ruins in the dark of night. And it is a creepy looking place. Like, if there was gonna be like a Count Dracula or a vampire, this is what you would think of as where he would hang out. So definitely look up the Melrose Abbey. It's beautiful, but it is very, very creepy. So let's go ahead. We're going to go to a short video break. For just a second. Gotta toggle this. Hold on, guys. There we go. We're going to go to a short break, and then we are going to go to the comments. All right, then. And if anybody's interested, we do video production. If anybody's interested in like promo videos, things like that. We also have some great deals on if you want to become a sponsor, and promotional, packages, space on the front page of our website, as well as things you saw just like that. Promotional commercials during our midways. So yeah, so if you're interested in that, just contact us. Go to our website and hit contact, and there will be a way to contact us if you're interested in either becoming a sponsor or if you're looking to have some sort of promotional video made. Alrighty, so let's get into this. We're going to get into some really cool ones now, and I can't wait to get to one. And it was so hard to get information on because It's getting harder and harder to find things, especially as it comes to the UK. I guess because of all their privacy laws and things like that, it's really hard to find information. So I am very proud of myself on one we're going to get to here in a minute. So very interesting tale. All right, so so now we're going to talk about another castle. Some of you may have heard of it. Some of you may not have heard of it. And it is this one entitled "The Secrets of Glamis Castle." Now, built in the 14th century, Glamis Castle is one of the oldest inhabited castles in Scotland. And even the land it was built on is rich with prehistoric history from the Picts. But this castle is not all fairy tale charm. In contrast, Glamis Castle has a horrifyingly bloody history as well as many dark secrets, and was, at least once, visited by Old Scratch himself. Among the living resides a group of malevolent spirits, some who have ancestral ties to the castle. I cannot talk tonight. And others who do not. Besides ghosts, Glamis Castle also has not one, but two creepy vampire legends. So let's get into the vampire accounts first. Now, the first vampire account was recorded some 100 years ago after one of the female servants was discovered drinking the blood of an unknown victim. As punishment for her crime, the woman was allegedly walled up inside a hidden chamber in the castle while she was still alive. Now, some believe she is still there, where she continues to sleep the sleep of the undead until someone finds her and she is loosed once again to feed upon the living. Now, another tale mentions the birth of a monstrous child in the early 1800s who was so deformed that he wasn't expected to live for very long. As a result, he was kept locked away in a room for much of his life, with very few people ever knowing about his existence. But to everyone's shock that knew about him, as well as their horror, the monster lived a very long life until he eventually passed away sometime between 1921 and 1941. Now, more interestingly, many believe the secrets of Glamis, or this particular one, is that the child was not only monstrous, but was in fact a vampire. And each generation of the particular family that basically lives there is cursed to have one monstrous child. Now, Glamis Castle has been the home of the Lion family since the 14th century, though the present building dates largely from the 17th century. Now, Glamis Castle was the childhood home of the late Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. Her second daughter, Prince Margaret, was born there on the 21st of August of 1930. Now, the monster itself does seem to have some validity. There was a child and a son that was born Thomas Lyons Bowes. He born and died supposedly on the 21st of October, 1821. He was the first child of Thomas Lyons Bowes, Lord Glamis, and his wife, Charlotte Lyon Bowes Grimstead. Although Thomas is recorded in Robert Douglas's Peerage of the Scotland as born and died, which is kind of another one of these historical chronicles, he does have it listed as born and died on October 21st of 1821. However, rumors did begin to circulate during the late 19th century that the child had been born deformed and had therefore been brought up in seclusion, hidden away somewhere in Glamis Castle in Angus, Scotland, giving rise to the legend of the monster of Glamis, or what is also known as the horror of Glamis. Now, rumors of Thomas Lyon Bowes' survival, as recounted by James Wentworth Day in his 1967 book, known as the Queen Mother's Family Story, appear to have stated in local villages, in local villages as the result of an account by a midwife. So this is where these rumors started, was in a local village based on the account of the presumed midwife that delivered the child, whose name, unfortunately, is unrecorded. The deformed child was alleged to have been in good health when the midwife left, causing suspicion when his death was announced a day or two later. The story was discussed during the latter half of the 19th century when Mrs. M. Gilchrist, writing in 1885, she was not only confident that such a monster did actually exist, but even described him, saying he was half frog and half man, and also claiming he was the rightful earl, in fact. Details published about the mystery of Glamis during the reign of Queen Victoria scarcely, however, mentioned a monster, and instead focused more so on the possibility of members of a rival clan dying while locked away in a secret room within the castle. Now, the earliest surviving reference dates from 1908, in which it was claimed that in the castle of Glamis is a secret chamber, and in this chamber is confined a monster, who is the rightful heir to the title and property, but who is so unpresentable that it is necessary to keep him out of sight and out of possession. The child Thomas has no gravestone. As the child had been baptized as a Christian at birth, this has been used to support the rumor that he survived. However, the fact that Thomas Lyon Bowles, as a child who died in infancy, has no individual gravestone is, however, in keeping with the funeral customs of the time, when, owing to high rates of infant mortality, usually only adults were commemorated in this way, basically with a headstone. While dedicated funerary monuments for children do in fact exist, they are comparatively rare. Now, during a visit to Glamis, the Queen Mother's biographer, Michael Thornton, who was allegedly told by the 16th Earl that the entrance to the chamber where Thomas lived had in fact been bricked up after his death. Some accounts also came from singer and composer Virginia Grabel, who stayed in the castle in 1870. Now, according to Raymond Lamont Brown, a folklorist writing an account of tales associated with Glamis, while stories of a concealed chamber are likely to have been on a factual basis, he asserts the family, however, emphatically denies rumors about the monster. Now, while the monster's existence has not been proven, there are records of a secret yet unknown chamber that was constructed somewhere in the depths of the castle. And in 1880, a newspaper in Scotland told of a workman who accidentally knocked through a wall in the castle and found the secret passage to a locked room. After he informed the steward, the man disappeared, and it was said that he had been given a large sum of money and was sent off to Australia. A ghost frequently is reported seen at Glamis, that is of Alexander, the 4th Earl of Strathmore, who lived there in the late 17th century and early 18th century, and was better known as Earl Bertie. According to one legend, Earl Bertie, a lord of Glamis at the time, and as well he was accompanied by 2 chieftains, were gambling one night in the tower, which is now uninhabited. They quarreled and cursed God. The devil appeared and doomed them to play dice there until the day of judgment. Now, according to another version, Earl Bertie, drunk one Sunday, could find no one to play cards with him and became so enraged that he said he would play cards with the devil himself. Old Scratch obliged and appeared in the form of a tall, dark man wearing a black coat and hat. The two retired to a small room from which issued sounds of loud shouting and swearing. The Earl at last protested that he had lost all his money, as well as apparently he had sold his soul. The devil vanished and took the soul with him. Earl Bertie died about 5 years later. Sounds of stamping, swearing, and the rattling of dice are still said to drift from the tower to this day. So I said we were going to get to comments, and I completely did not. So we're going to go to comments, and then we're going to get into some ghosts of Glamis, because there are ghosts associated with this. This particular castle is chock full of high strangeness. So let's see what's going on in the comments. All right, let's see. Sorry, guys. All right, who's all in here? Wow. All right, so Kisa said, if I had a castle, my moat would be 8 feet deep with gators. Now, I did see a new episode of the, was it Daryl Dixon? And they had a moat, which would actually, one of those old castles would be a fabulous place to hide for zombies. They had their moat filled with zombies. But yeah, gators would be amazing. Actually, if I could own a castle, I would find some way to have either piranhas or sea monsters. I'd love to have some sea monsters. Yeah. All right. And then Tia says, hi, Odd Mother. Well, hello, Tia. I am so glad you're here. So glad you're here. I hope you're enjoying this. Apparently, I can't talk this evening and getting completely tongue-tied, but I hope you are enjoying the content. Let's see. And then, what do we got here? Hold on, guys. So, Kisa says, it does look like a poncho. Yeah, it does. And then Kisa also said, kind of like the Bergia vampires. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the vampire legends, when you look into like if that's what we're talking about, if we're talking about the same thing, like the Strigoi and a lot of other ones that just go on to infinity, they're quite nasty. They're quite nasty. And they definitely are not something you would aspire to want to become. They're not beautiful. They're not sparkly. They're not intelligent. They're actually quite dumb. Yes, I do wish Vice was here, Kisa was saying. I do wish Vice was here because she would probably help me pronounce some of these a little bit better. But yeah, I wish she was. I think maybe she'd find this interesting since we're kind of talking about her home country a lot tonight. And Nadine's in the house. Hi, Nadine. I am so glad you're here. I thought that you were out having some spooky seasonal fun. Love the outfit. Absolutely love the outfit. I can't wait to get that up. And if you guys are wondering what I'm talking about and you haven't seen it yet, you will see it soon. And don't forget, for the ones tuning in that weren't here at the very beginning, the entries due in tonight. And Nadine, we've got yours. The entries due in tonight at midnight Pacific Standard Time at midnight. So hurry up and get them in if you haven't done so already. Yay, look, Akia is here. Hello. I hope you guys are having a fantastic time. So glad that you were able to pop in. And then Mr. Giggles is there with them. So they must be at Dark Harvest right now. So, ooh, fun. Hello, Mr. Giggles, if you're watching. Let's see. Okay, so we've gotten caught up on those. So now we're going to talk about the ghosts of Glamis Castle, because there are a lot of them, and we're only going to concentrate on a few. So the menagerie of ghosts are plentiful, like I just said. These include a woman, though thought to be Janet Douglas, wife of James Douglas, the 6th Lord of Glamis. Now, James died one morning after eating his breakfast, and Janet was suspected of poisoning him. though no evidence linked her to the dead, to this particular deed or his death. However, 6 years later, in 1537, she was accused of attempting to poison King James V. She was condemned and burned at the stake at Castle Hill in Edinburgh. And a lot of other stories that you read that, in fact, she was, accused of witchcraft and, things like that. But she was, in all cases, she was burned at the stake. Now, her ghost appears above the clock tower, wrapped in flames or a reddish glow. Now, another ghost is a ghost of a madman who walks the roofs along a spot called the Mad Earl's Walk on stormy nights. Other ghosts include unidentified gray ladies who haunt the chapel, a tongueless woman who races across the grounds, tearing at her mouth, a ghost by the name of Jack the Runner, who is a thin man who races up the drive to the castle. They're just running willy-nilly. A young boy, perhaps once a badly treated page, who sits by the door of the Queen Mother's sitting room. A woman with mournful eyes who clutches at the upper window as though imprisoned. And a tall figure dressed in a long, dark cloak. Now, there are poltergeist phenomenon at the castle, including a door which allegedly opens by itself every night, no matter how well secured or barricaded. There are strange hammerings and knockings are never a good sign. And bedclothes that are pulled off the overnight guests. So rape ghosts. Sounds like they got a rape ghost. There are also 2 legendary murders that are said to have been perpetrated at Glamis Castle, though, however, some think this is unlikely to be true. However, Macbeth's murder of King Duncan is believed to have been, basically the back setting was Glamis Castle, and that there was, basically it was based on one of these deaths that was committed there because Shakespeare mentions Glamis Castle in Macbeth. Macbeth's tortured ghost thus is said to haunt the palace. And I don't know if that's more of an allegory as far as the ghost. Now, oddly, the murder of King Malcolm II, who resided during the 11th century, also is placed at Glamis. Now, some try to debunk this, saying that despite the fact that Glamis Castle was not built until 3 centuries later, however, a lot of the historical documentation, because like I said, I had to dig into some historical references and maps and things like that. Glamis Castle is built basically, I think, on the resting place, if I'm not mistaken, of King Malcolm II, or at least where he met his demise. Now, nonetheless, lore has it that a mysterious blood stain from Malcolm's murder could not be scrubbed off the floor, and the entire floor in the room had to be boarded over. Now, let's talk about the weeping stones of Five Castle. I'd never heard of Five Castle before. Now, in the Grappain region of Scotland, north of Aberdeen, stands Five Castle. The castle was initially built as a royal fortress around the time of William the Lion in the early 13th century. The land around the castle was a royal hunting forest, and its name means Deer Hill in Gaelic. Now later, Robert the Bruce, enter Robert the Bruce again, would sometime dispense justice in an open-air court held beneath the beechwood trees at Five Castle. Five Castle is most famous for its mysterious curse and ghosts. The curse is known as the Weeping Stones Curse, and it is almost as old as the castle itself. The curse's ominous presence hangs over the castle and can still be felt today. Over 500 years ago, a prophet named Thomas the Rhymer, renowned for his gloomy predictions and ill temper, announced that he wished to visit Five Castle. In the anticipation of his arrival, and to welcome him, the castle's great doors were opened and left open for all time. But years passed, and Thomas had not yet visited the castle. Still, the door stood open. Thomas finally arrived 7 years and a day after he first announced he wished to see the castle. But the story goes, as he approached the entrance, a freak storm emerged and the wind slammed the doors closed in his face. Now, Thomas viewed the incident as a personal insult and, in anger, laid a curse upon the castle and its lands. And this is basically the curse. 5 thous never thrive. Langs therein the stains 3. There's ain intil the highest tower. There's ain intil the lady's bower. There's ain aneath the water yet, and there 3 stains ye never get. Now, what this curse spoke of is of 3 stones taken from the boundary markers of the castle lands. Thomas's curse decreed that until all 3 stones were found and reunited, a hex would remain on 5. The firstborn son of the families that lived at 5 would never inherit the castle. 1 stone, however, was indeed recovered and has been protected ever since. The other stones have never been found. They're yet to be found, which means that the curse remains on the castle to this day. To the owners of 5 Castle, the curse is indeed real because through the generations since the curse, the castle has indeed passed only to second sons or daughters, and in some cases, more distant relations, with the natural heirs being lost to wars or sickness. Now, the weeping stone also has an unexplainable physical property. Although kept in dry conditions in a wooden bowl, the stone becomes wet and the bowl fills with moisture, thus the name the weeping stones. The curse is said to be so powerful that the weeping stone found and kept in the castle still exerts its evil influence. A curator examining and preparing the weeping stone for display, which you can find pictures of the weeping stone, to the public, would experience random health problems after spending any considerable time near the stone. The first time he twisted his ankle, as did the surveyor near the stone on the same occasion. The next time the curator sprained his knee, and the third time when he prepared the stone for the showcase, he was rushed to the hospital in the middle of the night with kidney stones. And ever since, he has tried to avoid any close proximity to the stone. Now, 5 is also said to be haunted by not only Dame Lilith Drummond, wife of Alexander Seton, owner of the castle in the early 17th century. She is known as the Green Lady, but by a more recent occurrence during a renovation work on the castle in the early 20th century. Now, we're talking about the second occurrence, or the second ghost, which is kind of short-lived, but very interesting. And it kind of goes into the like what we talked about with the foundation offerings and the bodies and the animals and things like that were often laid somewhere within the foundation. So now, in the late 1920s, a strange growth of algae erupted on the wall of the castle gunroom. The owner at the time, Lord Leith, began renovations. When the workmen tore down the wall, they discovered a skeleton of a woman. So the way I'm understanding it, based on a couple of different stories, is the gunroom shared the same interior wall with the bedroom. Now, the remains were carefully removed, as you can imagine, and buried. But that was only the beginning. And it was these remains were given a Christian burial, on hallowed ground and all that kind of stuff. The ghost of a lady in gray began to appear so many times and startled so many people, not least of which was the lord of the castle, that he ordered the skeleton exhumed and placed back behind the wall. Once that happened, the Gray Lady's by her appeasement, she basically ceased her haunting. Now, this is my favorite, and it's got a longer story, but I'm going to give you the gist of it because it is almost impossible to get the whole story. But there is more of a story. Now, this takes place in Essex, Great Britain. The Devil's Mark at Runwell Rectory. Now, at the southwestern end, and you can look this up, close to the Wickford boundary, lies the parish church of St. Mary in Essex. Its gray stone tower dates back to the 15th century. But the round columns of the arcades are from a church which was a place of pilgrimage in the 12th century. Now, decorations of the timber of the porches bears Tudor roses, and on one of its doors, now curtained, is a strange burnt mark, which legend says is the mark of the devil. Now, how this mark got there was basically when one summer's day, he was shut into the church by a corrupt priest by the name of Ronaldus, who, rumor states, dabbled in black magic. Now, the story tells of Ronaldus, the parish priest, who was conducting a service when the devil, springing from his mouth, made an appearance and a grab for his eternal soul. The terrified priest escaped through the south door, slamming it shut, while the devil, unable to pass through the sanctified portals, angrily burnt his mark into the old oak door. Now, of course, in horror, the congregation dispersed, but they did eventually come back later. But to their absolute terror, all they found was that the priest had disappeared, and on the spot where he had been standing was a puddle of liquid. Ronaldus, it is said, vanished in a bubbling, hissing pool of evil-smelling black liquid, which sank beneath the brick floor of the south porch, leaving a circular stain wherein could be seen a strange, skull-like flint. And what they mean is a piece of stone. Doubtless on the account of its superstitious connection to this, this particular piece of flint or stone was quickly thrown away. But before you posh this, in 1944, a stone was discovered in the churchyard shaped as the legend describes, as part of Ronaldus' skull. Until recently, this flint was set into the south wall of the church, surrounded by an inscription in Latin that read, and I translate, "The wages of sin is death." If you want to look at the flint and you find yourself in Essex, the flint is now housed in South End Central Museum. So let's get on to something I haven't really talked about lately here. Oh, and I see John. Hello, John. How are you? Sorry to squirrel out, but there's John. Hello, John. So glad you're here. All right, so now we're going to talk about something that I absolutely adore, and there are so many different legends. And the deeper you look into it, the more you'll find that some mostly are foe, some can actually be friend. But when we talk about friend, we're talking more of like what they consider the graveyard grim. But what we're going to talk about now is basically stories that involve hellhounds. So the legend of the hellhound. A hellhound or devil dog is a supernatural animal found throughout mythology, folklore, and fiction. The hellhound legend dates back to ancient times and sightings and attacks that have been reported throughout history. Hellhounds tend to have black fur, glowing eyes, supernatural strength or speed, large teeth, long claws, and sometimes multiple heads. Devil dogs guard the entrance to the underworld and the grounds of graveyards. but those can also be Grimm's too. So they also hunt lost souls and protect a supernatural treasure. In European folklore, seeing a hellhound or hearing its howl is seen as an omen of doom or cause of death. Hellhounds show up in many cultures and have many names, including the three-headed Cerberus in Greek mythology, Anubis in Egyptian mythology, Gamur in Norse mythology, Perro Negro in Latin America, and of course, Black Shuck in England. Now, Black Shuck can also be known as Old Shuck, Old Shot, or just simply Shuck, as well as Padfoot. And I added that one in there. He's known as Padfoot as well. Now, Shuck is the name given to a medieval hellhound in England. This devil dog was said to have black fur, flaming eyes, sharp teeth and claws, and great strength. Locals describe sightings of Black Shuck in graveyards, forests, and roadsides. Shuck's most famous attack, however, happened on August the 4th of 1577. This happened at two churches, one in Blythburgh and one in Bungay in the English countryside. Now, during a storm on August 4th of 1577, Black Shuck reportedly broke through the doors of Holy Trinity Church in Blythburgh, about 7 miles from Leiston Abbey. And charging through a large congregation, it was during this attack that he allegedly killed a man and a boy before the church steeple collapsed through the roof. As the hellhound departed, he left claw marks on the north door of Holy Trinity Church. They're supposedly still visible today, and you can see them if you look up Holy Trinity Church. That same day, Black Shuck was rumored to have rampaged through St. Mary's Church in Bungay, about 12 miles away, which was described in another historical chronicle, this chronicle by the name of A Strange and Terrible Wonder, a pamphlet written by Reverend Abraham Fleming in 1577. And I quote, "This black dog, or devil," I think he was trying to say devil, "in such lineliness, God," and in quotations, "God, he knoweth all who worketh all, running all along down the body of the church with great swiftness and incredible haste among the people, in a visible form and shape, passed between two persons as they were kneeling upon their knees and occupied in prayer, as it is seemed, wrung their necks of both of them in one instant cleanly backward, and so much that even a moment where they kneeled, they strangely died." So it does account for two particular deaths, as basically he is reporting they kneeled and it broke their necks swiftly at the same time. Now, before you poo-poo that away, fun fact, in 2014, Dig Ventures, which is a London-based archaeology group, unearthed the bones of a gigantic dog from a shallow grave about 20 inches deep in the ruins of Leiston Abbey, Suffolk. Archaeologists estimate that the canine stood more than 7 feet tall on its hind legs and weighed about 200 pounds. Dig Ventures researchers believe the canine bones likely do date to when the abbey was active, so they are likely medieval. English folklore is full of stories about a supernatural dog, known as Black Shuck, that prowled the countryside around Leiston Abbey 500 years ago. Due to the size and date of these bones, many have speculated that these large canine remains could in fact be the connection to the legend of Black Shuck. So I found that kind of cool. So let's move on to a ghostly town with ghostly bells. And maybe you haven't heard this one either. Like I said, I hope you've learned a lot tonight. Found some interesting stories. This is called the Sea-Tombed Village of Singleton Thorpe. The Lancashire port town of Fleetwood standing on the Clyde coast just north of Blackpool, was until recent times a thriving harbor for the North Sea trawlers. However, there remains a superstition among fishermen that would return them immediately to Portside if the bells of Singleton Thorpe Church were heard to toll. Why is this considered an ill omen? Because Singleton Thorpe was swallowed by the sea centuries before, and the bell is in fact tolling from beneath the waves. Singleton Thorpe is said to be a village that stood off the present north shore of Blackwood during a time when the coastline stretched 2 miles further out to sea and was largely forested. It boasted a hostelry, which is kind of like a shanty and party house, basically, a nightclub. A hostelry called the Penny o' Pint, or Penny o' Pint, which was built next to a natural formation known as the Penny Stone Rocks, where travelers tethered their horses with iron hooks. And I mean like their bridles, not actually like hooking their horses onto metal hooks. That would be weird. Now, according to local legend, it was during the reign of Bloody Mary. The village was swept away during one night in sometime either in 1554 or 1555, although some accounts do suggest it was 1570. And it was due to a massive insurgence of the sea. The cause was possibly volcanic or other seismic activity, what would be now termed as a tsunami, and the village disappeared beneath the waves forever. Apart from the underwater church bells, it is said that the racketing of phantom carousellers or partygoers at the Penny o' Pint can be heard on tempestuous nights. Folk stories of submerged villages are to be found around most shores of the UK, dating from the times when the sea levels were lower and the country was covered with more forests. Maps from before the late 1500s indicate the northwest coastline from South Lancashire up to Carlisle near the Scottish border did in fact stretch out a mile or two further than today. A total of 12 villages that stood along the peninsula were said to have been destroyed when that very tsunami hit the coast that fateful night, either in 1554 or 1555. Now, another one of these ghost towns is known as Kilgramoyle, near Lytham Street, Anns, from which no one survived this particular flood of the sea. But legend has it that during the years that followed, the submerged graveyard of Kilgramoyle, that's a hard one to pronounce, church, deposited coffins of decaying bodies on the beach after a storm disturbed their graves and they rose to the surface. So that had to have been absolutely terrifying to find. However, there are indications another of these villages, Wadhamthorpe, which stood off of Blackpool's south shore, was actually destroyed by a tidal wave in 1532. So there was a lot of maybe seismic activity going on with the sea there and lots of encroachment by the sea. Now, the Victorian Aquarian William Thornburr claimed that Singleton Thorpe was swept away overnight, and it, though, had survivors. They did flee inland and set up a new village simply called Singleton, which stands to this day. But should you ever be sailing around the Fidel coast as the waves crash wildly, listen out for the church bells. And that ends tonight. We went 25 minutes over. So let's see what's going on in the comments. See if we've got anybody in here. I see a couple of people. Yes. So let's see. John. Yeah, I got to put my eyeballs in. Hold on. That's a horse. Yeah. Well, I'm taking it that he was standing up on his back legs would be 7 feet tall. It would still be a big dog. And just like Kisa says, that would be bigger than an Irish Wolfhound. So, it could have been a dire wolf, Bones. It was some sort of canine for sure. Yes. And Kisa says, from whom the bell tolls. Oh, and I finally got to see, and I swear it seemed like they kept bumping the date back. But did any of you guys, speaking of the bells tolling, have you guys checked out any of the Fall of House of Usher yet on Netflix? Very good. It's very good. I'm halfway through it. And I'm not going to spoil it, but I love how they're doing each episode. And you'll see what I'm talking about if you have not seen it yet. This. And then John says that one day California will fall into the sea. It is on a fault line, that's for sure. On a fault line. And then Kisa says, or become an island. And then John, and I'm assuming you're talking about the bodies washing up on shore and the disappearing villages or the graveyard that got swallowed by the sea. Yeah, that would be nasty, wouldn't it? Definitely would be a cool one for John Carpenter to make. Get that fog feeling. That would be very cool. And then he says that happened on the Mississippi once during the flood. Coffins were floating around. Yeah, that happened during not Opal, but what was the other really bad one that hit like the New Orleans area? I was going to say 10 years ago, but God, it's probably been more like 15 years ago. I can't remember the name of that hurricane. But yeah, there were floating coffins everywhere. And the Calvin says loved it. Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Like I said, I had a lot of things to unpack. Now, just to let you guys know, ours or mine and Roots Bleed Red schedule is a little discombobbled right now. Because they covered for me last weekend when me and Odd Daughter went to Spooks Haunted Trail in Maze. I'm covering for them while they're out there at Dark Harvest. So they should be, actually next week should probably be my normal time. But I have some personal plans, somebody's birthday that I've got to be at. So if I'm not here next Friday, I will definitely hop in before Halloween, because the last episode that I wanted to cover for the spooky season would be the infamous Boogeyman. We've got to talk about the Boogeyman. You don't hear a lot of people talking about the Boogeyman and really dive deep into some of its forms and different things along those lines. So I'll definitely, if I'm not here next Friday, we're going to find a time for me to do a special episode so that we can cover that, because that's something that has to be covered during October as far as I'm concerned. So let's see. Yes, and so Kisa says she's catching up on Stranger Things. That is a good one. I absolutely love Stranger Things. Absolutely love it. And let's see. John says he got kicked off Netflix. Yeah, they've gotten really strict with that stuff, like the sharing and stuff. It's crazy. It's nuts. Aw, and you're making my overnight shift spooky with that music. Well, good. I hope it's not too loud. It sounds weird on my end, but hopefully it's not too loud. And then John says he's sorry that he missed the beginning. That is quite all right. Yeah, just catch it on hashtag replay. If you don't mind me being tongue-tied, I tell you what, as long as I've been doing this, I seem to do fine until I get in front of the camera and then I can't speak. I don't know what the problem is. Plus, having a skeleton face doesn't help with pronunciation. All right, so guys, again, let me go over these last little things. If you're just joining us, happy Friday the 13th to everybody out there. We love you guys. Thank you to Spooks Haunted Trail and Maze for having me and Odd Daughter last weekend. If you guys live near the Birmingham, Jasper area, you have got to go check it out. It's very cool. And it's one of those situations to where you don't have to put $2 million into like animatronics and things like that. This place was truly scary. And I'm not going to go into why. It's more of an internal thing, I think, but it was just very cool. Reminded me a little bit of had kind of a Rob Zombie feel. That's all I'll say. Steve the Cat will be returning Monday the 16th, which I believe is this coming up Monday. Again, we want to wish Hexus and Akka a safe trip and much fun out there at Dark Harvest in Garden Grove, California tonight. And if you are going to enter the costume contest, there I go again, costume contest, you need to get your entries in tonight. Send them to peabodydc@gmail.com, or you can go on our website and there's a way to click and contact us. But we need at least 1, 2, preferably, of your costume, because it ends at midnight Pacific Standard Time tonight. And within the next 24 hours, you'll start seeing everybody, and we've got a lot of them this year, start seeing the entries pop up on the website. You'll have a way to vote for your favorite ghoul or ghost. And so definitely, gather up all your ghoulish friends and go vote and show support for the fine people that took the time to submit these. And because it's not an easy thing to do, not an easy thing to do to get your costume and have it put up on a website. So we send them many, many kudos for doing that. I mean, I think it's really cool. Not to mention that the winner will, in fact, win some very cool merch. So that'll be a lot of fun. And those will be popping up sometime within the next 24 hours starting tomorrow. So I think that's it. And I am going to, let's see, go over here. Yeah. Sorry, guys. It is hard to deal with this new setup. Sorry. Okay. So I'm going to wish you guys pleasant nightmares. Have a great rest of the week. And we will see you later. Bye.
And now, folks, it's time to say goodnight. We sincerely appreciate your patronage and hope we've succeeded in bringing you an enjoyable evening of entertainment. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon. Good night.
Well, he may be stuck with me. Hold on just a second.